All right, so last class we talked about what exactly is a feature, how is that different from a press release or any type of news article, for instance. As a reminder, a feature article is more of a human interest story. It's a lot more in depth, and we can write a feature about any topic. It's more so the style of writing that makes a feature very different from what you would see in a traditional news article. One of the key differences between a traditional news article and then a feature is, you can find that in the lead. And so, as you guys know, with the traditional news article, with your summary lead, it's the first thing that appears in that article, right? And again, it summarizes the 5 W's and the 1 H, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So we're getting right to the point at the very beginning of our article. And then for the most part, with traditional news leads, they tend to be very short and to the point, and we're using a lot of active voice. Now, we're still using active voice with feature leads. However, they're going to be a lot longer than your traditional summary lead. In fact, I would say that a feature lead is anywhere from about 4 to 6 sentences. And then again, that's a minimum. For you guys, I would probably stay within that realm, that 4 to 6 sentences. But again, as you guys can see, it's a lot longer than your traditional summary lead. And then also your feature lead is what we call a delayed lead. So essentially it takes a little bit longer for the reader to really understand what's the point of the story, what's the purpose. And so it kind of embodies that traditional storytelling approach that we're used to in maybe, fictional writing. So those are some of the key differences between traditional news leads and then your feature leads. So this example is actually straight from the textbook. I think it's a really good example that illustrates the key differences between, your traditional news lead and the feature one. So go ahead and read this to yourself. And in the next minute or so, if you can, go ahead and put in the chat, what are some key differences that you see between these leads? All right, so this person, I think this is Alexis because it says A. Ross. I could be wrong, so sorry. Hard news article states only the facts in the lead, right? And then, yeah, only the facts that are relevant to that reader. Very good, good observation. More folks, go ahead and type your response in the chat here. Some differences that you notice. So Sophie put the feature news lead has more of an emotional aspect to it. Yeah, so it does, I think, at least a better job of really honing in on the emotional appeals of the story. It really tugs at your heart a bit. Very good. So Nick put in the hard news reading, the most important piece of information was the first thing the reader reads. Excellent. And the feature reading, the first sentence tried to make the audience, gauge the scene. So again, it's not just about, with the feature lead at least, it's not just, telling the reader what happened. It's really setting that scene in the story. Make sure that this is on silent. Sorry about that, guys. So Sam put the hard news has a very direct way of putting the information with no extra details that add a story element. The feature news, on the other hand, includes a bit of emotion by introducing Sarah Jackson and her relationship, or in the relationship to her sons. Excellent. And then Erica put the feature mentioned Sarah, or not Sarah, Sharon, and seems to focus on her point of view. Excellent. So it seems like you guys are getting this. So with your hard news lead, it's getting to the point, just telling the facts. Feature news lead, it's setting the scene, it's connecting the emotion with the people involved in the story with the emotion of the reader. It's really trying to incorporate, again, that human interest angle. And then also the feature lead is a little bit longer than your hard news lead. The second paragraph that you see in the hard news lead, that's actually what we call the nut graph, if you guys can recall that. The specific lead is that first paragraph. So the two local boys were found dead. So there are a variety of different types of feature leads that you will come across. In the textbook, I only talked about two because I feel like these are the two most, commonly used. But again, there are more than just two feature leads. We have what's called an anecdotal lead. So an anecdotal lead is essentially when the feature story starts off with like a minor story or something, some type of narrative that's relevant to the larger story at hand. It's usually a lot more specific than what we might find in a descriptive lead. So again, it's honing in on a specific experience that kind of sets the scene to the larger story that we're describing in our feature lead. So it can be a specific quote. It can be about, again, a specific day that took place in this person's life. So again, it's more narrative based and again, more specific. Now your descriptive lead, it basically, like I said, kind of sets the scene a bit. So it's using a lot of, and I hate to use the same word in the definition, but it uses a lot of descriptive language. So if you guys recall from my last lecture, I talked about how when you're writing a feature, you really need to make sure that you're tapping into those five senses. So the reader should be able to literally see, or figuratively see, what's going on in your story. They should be able to imagine what's going on. So the descriptive lead does essentially that, but it's not about a specific situation. It's a little more vague and abstract than what you might find in an anecdotal lead. Now, I will say that in your anecdotal lead, it certainly can use descriptive language, but it doesn't have to. But for your descriptive lead, you most certainly should. So you could, for example, to open up your feature lead, you can describe, right? Physically describe how the person that you're talking about in your feature story looks, right? So it's not about a specific situation. It's just a description that helps to kind of grab the attention of the reader. And then you go into the purpose of your feature story. So here on this slide, again, I'm just reiterating some of the differences here. And I've honestly already talked about this, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this slide. So once more, I think this is also in the textbook. Go ahead and read this example feature lead and go ahead in the chat. Tell me which feature lead do you think this one is? Is it an example of an anecdotal lead or a descriptive lead? All right, so we have a few responses coming in: anecdotal, anecdotal, anecdotal. Anecdotal, yes. So you guys are correct. This is an example of an anecdotal lead. Why is that? Because it's talking about a specific situation. Now, I'm not saying that it's not descriptive, right? So you probably can imagine this scene, but it's not, about a vague situation, or it's not necessarily, using, those five senses or that descriptive language that helps to tap into those five senses. This is about a specific minor narrative that I'm sure would lead into the overall story in the feature. Excellent. All right, what about this example? It's a little bit longer. So go ahead and read that to yourself. In the same situation, go ahead and put your answer in the chat. So we have a few coming in. So descriptive, yes, descriptive, descriptive. Very good. So this would be more of an example of a descriptive lead. So the reason why that's the case, it's using more descriptive language, it's tapping into the five senses, and more importantly, it's not about a specific day within, for example, Michael Ray's life. It's really just saying on any given day, this person can be found doing X, Y, and Z. So it's not like, a minor narrative or an anecdote. It's more so of a descriptive passage. All right, seems like you guys are getting this, so we're going to go ahead and move on. So just to kind of recap in general features, right? So make sure that you guys are including, really compelling direct quotes. Only choose the ones that are really going to resonate with your readers or really going to have a profound impact on your feature. Also, when you guys go to do your feature assignment, which I'm not going to talk about until next week, but just to kind of put it in your head, that you fact check everything and that you spell check people's names, especially in a feature, since you're talking about a specific person or a specific business. Also make sure that you are engaging in descriptive writing. So again, setting the scene for the reader and being really visual here. The paragraphs, similar to the traditional news story, it's not going to be indented. Here I put no more than 3 sentences per paragraph, but I really should change that. So I'll go ahead and update that a little bit later on. I would say no more than about 4 to 5 sentences for a feature story. But of course, make sure the direct quotes take on their own paragraph. And then something really minor, make sure that your headline is the last thing that you write and include a contact list for your sources. All right, so that concludes a lecture today. Let's go ahead and talk about your tight deadline assignment that is due next Tuesday. Let's see, go ahead and share that screen with you guys as well. So you guys can follow along with me if you go to assignments, or I believe it's right on the home page where it states what's coming up in our class. Oh gosh, I forgot this is not doing what I wanted to do. Let's try that. Okay, so I've changed this assignment a bit, again, in light of the situation that we find ourselves in. This tight deadline assignment basically gives you the opportunity to practice writing feature leads. Remember, they're different from your traditional news leads. So what I'd like you guys to do for these news stories that I've attached here in the assignment description, go ahead and write a feature lead for the stories. All the stories that you see here are, formatted or organized or written in a way that you would find in a traditional news article. So they're essentially traditional news articles, all of them. And so what you're going to do is, of course, skim through the story, make sure that you understand the gist of it, and then write or make up, I should say, a feature lead for each story. Doesn't have to be, all descriptive or all anecdotal leads. All you have to do is just choose one of them and then just write the lead from there. You can make up characters or make up, I should say, names if there isn't, a person mentioned in that story, but you can't make up, information that's not true about the overall gist or the purpose of the story or the topic at hand. As a reminder, make sure that your lead is a little bit longer than what you might find in your traditional news lead. So I would say the last sentence in your feature lead paragraph should convey the purpose of the story or what the story is all about. So once more, you're going to set this scene or maybe make up an anecdote for your anecdotal lead, for instance, and then that last, I guess you can say kicker or the sentence that brings it all home should describe the purpose of the story. And once more, here I'm just describing or reminding you guys what an anecdotal lead is versus a descriptive lead. If you are going to make up, characters or things of that sort, I just ask that you refrain from using, second person. So sometimes what I get from students is, imagine you're in, or you're a student at Ohio State and you're trying to juggle, going to school and then working, a full-time job. You don't want to do that using, second person, you, our, things of that nature. You want to make sure that you're still using third person. And then once more, make sure that you aren't revealing the purpose of the story until a little bit later on in that feature lead paragraph. And just in case you encounter some like technological issues with clicking on the link, in the assignment description, I included a PDF for each story as well. So again, just to be a little repetitive here, you're going to write a feature lead for each story. Each story is written in a way that we would find in a traditional news story. So once more, just write a feature lead for each of it, or each of them. Any questions over that? That's the only thing you have to do for this upcoming tight deadline assignment. All right, and then one last thing to clarify. I'm sorry, Alexis. I think there's a delay on my end. I don't know why. The feature lead should be 4 to 6 sentences. Yes. So I would, even though I put here minimum of 3 sentences, I would definitely try to reach 4 to 6 sentences or so. Good question. I'll pause again. Any other questions? So Sam asked, how would I like us to, or like you guys to format the Word document? That's a really great question, Sam. So all you have to do maybe is put, for instance, if you guys can see here, Article 1, feature lead, and it doesn't have to be capitalized like that. And then just write your lead from there. I don't need the story title or anything like that. I've read all the stories, so I can kind of, guess for which story this lead, is. I will say, don't use this as same assignment description. So sometimes what I get from students is they'll just, for whatever reason, copy and paste this information here, or just, write their assignment or their submission here. Don't do that. Just start a, completely separate Word document. And there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. Gosh darn it. But yes, just, put the title, Article 1, feature lead, and then just start with writing your feature lead, excuse me. Any other questions? Okay, well, if there aren't any questions as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and end today's meeting. If you want me to take a look at your tight deadline assignment before it's due, just send me an email and we can set up a call and I can go through and give you some feedback on the assignment. So thank you guys so much for attending today's class, and I will see you next weekend or next week. Have a great weekend.